Good morning and good evening, or good evening, everyone, for whoever is, for wherever you are located in the world. It is a pleasure. It is actually a real pleasure to have you guys all here, and we are here with Dima, the CTO of Tori, to get to learn a little more about the future of immersive experience design. We're gonna ask questions, and I'm gonna ask questions because I have many. But I suppose that you guys also have as much, and that's why we really encourage everybody to actually chip in, ask whatever you have in mind. And if at any moment also you have some problem with audios or whatever, something's not working, just also send us a message so that we make sure to fix that. So, indeed, Dima, I think more or less the floor is yours. Why don't you maybe very briefly give introduction about yourself and about Tuori, what it is and why you're here?
Hi, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. Yes, thanks for having me here. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at Suvari. And so I've been starting playing around and experimenting with virtual reality in 2014. And I was really excited about the first prototype of Oculus Rift when it came out. And, the first
Those
Kickstarter
were the
campaign.
time.
Yeah. I mean, people were doing virtual reality for like 30 years before, but there was some academic work, some research, but only recently, like 8 years ago, we started to have like so many people working on different stuff, like from games to
Yeah, sure.
immersive,
Yeah, yeah.
like any kind of experiences and applications that are useful for different areas. And so yeah, I got excited. I tried like first virtual reality when I was a little kid, like this huge headset, and I think it was playing some sort of Doom. It was super pixelated, and it was like this tiny screen, but it was kind of stereoscopic. But yeah, I mean, the first dev kit blew me away. And even with those limitations, like with those large pixels and with the fact that you couldn't move your body, your head in space, even with those limitations, I saw potential and hoped that it will develop further. And I will someday participate and work on virtual reality. And from 2012, I started to think, how can I make my way into doing virtual reality stuff full time, thinking thinking about different ideas, different games. And before that, I was working like developing my games, my applications, like different startups and projects. And I got my headset in 2014 and started playing with it and started making games and trying different ideas. And yeah, then we like early in 2016 we started working on different kind of prototypes that came about and turned into what we have now into Tvori. Yeah, that is kind of short story
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. Super short. And so Tvori is, how would you, if you would have, if you could say like, just one sentence about Tvori, what is it?
yeah we I mean, I tried to do different like one-liners. I think, I mean, we try to say that Tivori democratizes 3D creation, or right now what we are focusing on is allowing people to design virtual reality in virtual reality. Um, but yeah, it's an immersive 3D editing software. I mean, software and 3D editing sounds kind of too broad and maybe complicated. But yeah, we try to come up with simple solutions for people to create stuff in virtual reality
Yeah.
that is what's useful and can move them forward in terms of like visualizing ideas and pitching ideas to other people and playing around in space, like using different shapes and
Yeah.
strokes to kind of came up with new ideas or trying ideas out that people have in their heads.
So,
Um,
and I think that's also one interesting point, that it is about, so there are many VR apps and they do different things. I think that there is one
yeah.
group of VR apps that are the productivity apps, right? And I
Mhm.
think it also design a user experience and the kind of interaction that the user, the creator has, the moment that he steps into a productivity apps has to be completely in a way designed for that. Right, it's not like when you step in a game and a game kind of like asks you to do certain things, to maybe to interact with the environments, but not so as much with the UI. Right, this is usually the case. While instead, when you are doing a productivity app, that's the moment that UI really becomes key. So, and I really want to jump into this, and I think that there might be also some example maybe that you can share, or something you have. But my first question would be, what is that based on your experience, would make for a great UI UX in VR? Of course, we are talking about.
Yeah. I think it starts with actually what applies to any kind of user interface and user experience, that it should be designed around a certain goal. And so even games that have UI, so the goal of UI in games could be to be immersive and not putting people away from the game. Or in our case, when we are designing Suvari, we are thinking how to make our tools like playful yet powerful. So it's possible to understand how it works from glancing at our tools, and it's possible to just start right away, from launching Suvari to doing something in just a matter of minutes. And so designing around the goal, or a certain goal, and designing UI in such a way that it doesn't stand on the way of users. And in VR, like what applies to VR in particular is using unique kind of native properties or capabilities of virtual reality. So we have our hands in space, we have our head, soon we will have our body, we will have our full, articulated fingers with hand tracking. And so the question then, what can we do with that? What unique, what kind of stuff we can create that is not possible in other mediums? So why people are going to use VR? I guess it comes to unique properties of virtual reality and using them to the fullest to uncover advantages of virtual reality.
That's very interesting, because actually it's true. Like I think around 30 minutes ago, before we started, I just saw an article, and in there was a conversation that was saying like, because at the end we decided from a company that makes indeed a VR application. They said we wanted to go for 2D, because we believe that 2D UI interfaces are intuitive. Everybody knows how they work. And while instead it seems like that you guys took a very different approach, that is like, okay, we need to redesign, we need to reinvent. Now, one thing that I would like to ask everybody now that it's in the chat, we have around 130 person. So it's like, what balance of 2D and 3D UI would you add in your VR experience, right? It could be 20 2D, 80 3D, or I'm really curious to know how you would do this. And in this case, I feel that maybe later we're going to show you some little clips, but I think you had more 90 3D and 10 2D, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically like the kind of approach that you get. And I think the one thing it's particularly challenging is how do you get that 3D conveyed easily. So you mentioned about, for example, as soon as I see an object, I know what to do with it, right? How have you done it in Tvori? How did you get that across?
Yeah, I think we're still like developing our language and trying different ideas, and maybe not everything works. But so coming back to like you were saying that some people decide to use 2D conventions from design of mobile applications, of apps, and it's okay. I mean, some applications can work with traditional 2D interfaces when they are presented on surfaces, So I think there are like two extremes. The first extreme is when you take everything from the previous medium. So in our case, it's web design, it's mobile app development, and you take everything, every best practice, and just try to put it in virtual reality or augmented reality, and that can work. But this approach doesn't bring anything new to the table. At least if it's not using unique advantages of virtual reality. And another extreme would be inventing everything from scratch, like throwing away every convention and
Yeah.
just doing stuff that wasn't explored before. And that also, it has some disadvantages, such as lots of ideas that we have might not work, or people
Yeah.
might not understand how to use them because they didn't encounter that in their life before.
Yeah.
But it has unique, it also has advantage, such as some ideas might be great and they can push VR forward. Because I think right now we explored only a couple of percent. I mean, taking all of the VR developers, just a couple of percent of what can be done in virtual reality. And yeah, there are limitations in terms of headsets, and there's still low resolution. There's still not they're not very they're not aware of surroundings that much. But there are also limitations in software because I mean, even with the current generations of these headsets, we can come up with ideas that are uh, unique and apply those ideas that apply very well to immersive media, such as we have some approaches that we are proud of, and we weren't looking at existing conventions. We're just looking at the world and say like we were looking at people who create stuff with their hands, like
Yeah. Clay or
crafters, people who repair things. We know that those people use usually both hands, where one hand is main leading hand, dominant, and but we also use our non-dominant
yeah.
hand to kind of help to move some tools around, and we surround ourselves with tools where creatures who evolved to use tools, and yeah, we try to taking into an account that kind of property of human
Yes.
beings and design around that.
That's it, because then, when it kind of like say when you have a 2D interface, what you do is
Yeah,
right, and that's not really what human beings
yeah,
do. I mean, unless you're poking someone, maybe.
yeah,
But right, in theory, you do like this, right? You grab and stretch. So you mentioned about some example, right? Do you have some that maybe you can
yeah,
share to give an
yeah.
impression?
I can share. Yeah, yeah. I
By the way,
prepared.
I've got here in reality said 100% 3D 3D interfaces. So I'm gonna next ask which one, because we want to see all of them so that we can all learn from each other.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, Dima, go ahead.
Yeah,
Show something. I'm just gonna interact with the chat. And see if anybody is asking. Oh, of course, guys. I mean, as I said, ask questions. We are here, and now we have Dima that is going to uh, share some of these examples.
yeah. I prepared a couple of examples. One is from Tilbrush. Actually, we'll also have an idea. So there is a kind of examples we can draw from previous mediums, say when computers didn't have screens and it was possible to calculate trajectories of rockets or some math equations, but it was not possible to do visual stuff. So monitors, displays allowed us to do that. Then mouse came and graphical user interfaces, and some people were against that because they thought that it will slow down. It's faster to type in comments or using shortcuts than using mouse. But graphical user interface allowed to like people who edit photographs or videos or working with like CAD modeling or 3D editing, any kind of editing that requires to move stuff. So, but and say touch. Uh, we have now mobile phones and tablets, and they have their own unique ways to interact,
Yeah,
unique inputs. And if we smartphones in 2000s, they were taking all the conventions from PCs, and that wasn't making smartphones that great. But then iPhone came and other phones, and they use different approaches
yeah,
because they take small screen. They take into account that you can use your fingers, and there are no Instagram for PC. I mean, so Tilt Brush, it's a painting. I mean,
yeah.
everyone.
Let's
But
assume
yeah,
that people are somehow aware of a tilt brush.
yeah. what's great about ZBrush is that they didn't took exactly one-to-one Photoshop or any other painting software. They looked at people who paint, those kind of Renaissance painters, with one brush in one hand and palette in another.
Yeah.
And they dip their brush, the tip of the brush into paint, and they use it like that.
Yeah.
And so they took that approach and applied that into virtual reality. And they added more, things that is impossible to do with regular physical paint palette thing. They applied, you can choose between different kind of strokes, and but they also take conventions from Photoshop. So there's like a brush that kind of selected to brush has this kind of border, and they use some of the conventions, but on the same time they invent new stuff, and that works great for painting software because that's what people do when they paint. Another example is a game. So in that case, it is Superhot, and Superhot doesn't have a traditional interface, a user interface. So everything happens within the game, so it doesn't, distract players from the game, and all of the interfaces are physical. And to start a new game, you take a virtual headset on, and then to start a new level, you take an object, and then you throw it into an enemy. And so this game is so the main mechanics is that when you move, the game moves, and so your enemy moves.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any traditional UI, but it has some user interface, which is part of the game. And to exit the game, you take a pistol and shoot yourself in the head, and it was great for that game. And I will obviously plug in Suvari here.
Dima, wait a second. I don't know if people, I see here, maybe it's a bit blurry. Can you confirm, is it blurry for you guys? Let me know in the chat, but please, Dima, go ahead. Maybe the streaming got a bit overloaded.
Yeah, maybe I have this option that optimizes screen for when it plays.
I don't think it has to do with you. Looks great on my end. Someone is blurry.
So in Suvari we have physical works, kind of tools that present themselves in space, and you can place different tools around yourself and use them as if they were physical objects. And we have both hands, and they work as the same. We don't distinguish between dominant hand and non-dominant. You can move everything. You can use any tool with left or right hand, and that's kind of symmetry helps.
Can you go both a second behind in the video, because there was something that where like. Yes, this. So this is what you were doing there, was basically selecting multiple objects, just drawing this bubble, right?
Yeah. So we kind of do this, and we select everything that goes inside that sphere selection, we call it.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you have kind of like a 3D selection tool in a way, right? Because often, for example, Tilt Brush or many others, what they do is that they kind of like brush stuff, like mark them. And I think it is good, but the moment that you are in a 3D space, you want to select stuff in 3D, right? So I think it actually makes very much sense.
So those 3 examples, and so the main point is that we should take advantages of virtual reality and try to design around those advantages, and do things that either are not possible in other like 2D applications, or not as convenient as in virtual reality. And in virtual reality, it's super convenient to place things around in 3D space.
Yeah.
We have our hands, we have.
And there were some people actually that were asking, what is this? Yes, this is Suvari. This is what basically Dima and the team work over the past 5 years. Am I correct?
It will be like, we started in 4 years. Yeah.
So the one basically where there was these scenes where he was selecting that is for, and I think we might also see some other example after, and with some also of the user interfaces really that you built and how. One question that I had was like, now we discussed a bit about this this difference between um, the um, the 2D and the 3D, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, as a designer and a developer, right, try to not to design a 3D interface as it is a 2D interface? So really, during your thinking as a team, how do you do that? How you don't fall into that kind of like habit?
Yeah. I mean, we try to design as close as possible to virtual reality. And so, if we have an idea, we try to either program that idea or sketch that idea in Suvari as soon as possible and try it in virtual reality. And because it helps to understand whether that idea works or what needs to be done to improve it, or coming up with a totally different idea. So the short answer to that is, if you want to design user interface for virtual reality that is using uh, all of the native advantages of virtual reality, then you should design those in virtual reality. So, I mean, I already mentioned Tvori, and it's our main focus now, helping people to design, to come up with ideas to design stuff in virtual reality. But you can use Gravity Sketch, you can use Microsoft Maquette, you can use even Tilt Brush and Quill if you are artistically skilled person, and you can use those as kind of
Yeah.
3D sketchbook.
Let me actually, I want to follow up on that, but I also want to ask the people, well, how do you actually do your own designs, right? So let's say that, because it
Oh,
is a process, right? So you start with an idea, right? Just very start with a sketch,
yeah.
and that's how it all starts, and it should be like that, right?
Mm.
But then after that, what is the next step? Because I think a lot of people might just, for example, start building stuff in Unity. I see people that maybe might create some paper prototypes. Some people go to 2D tools, for example, like maybe Figma or some other. So I'm really curious, guys. What tools do you use to kind of like right after the first sketch to bring your 3D or 2D, but in general, your UI for VR to life? So, and in this case, Dima, what advice would you give to people to stop thinking and to start doing it this way?
Hmm. I mean, yeah. If you have any idea that you want, and you want some idea for virtual reality or augmented reality application, then go in virtual reality. And I mean, you might like sketch that idea, but then try to go to virtual reality as soon as possible and sketch that idea. It is what we've been doing for the last year. And before that, we were mostly like developing stuff. First with using some temporary objects, and then looking at how it behave and whether it's satisfying or not, or some new ideas would come up, uh, and we would try to do it as quick as possible. So you just have an idea, program it, or Victor would go to 3ds Max, like build a brush or a trail, and then put it right into Unity, and then look at that, and he will either like will be satisfied with that or decide to go and improve that based on how he absorbed that thing. And now we do that primarily in Tivori. So you just take our shelf, take some primitives, and try to using those limitations and just primitive objects,
Yeah.
try to create your idea. To lay it around, make it with the right scale, so the button you know is accessible, and uh, it helps to uh, create a comfortable experience as well. Understand what needs to be adjusted from the initial idea or from the initial piece of from the initial iteration. And it also, like, the huge advantage is that you can come up with new ideas after you see your first draft.
And I think this is something interesting, right? I was actually thinking like, what, why you would do this in the first place, right? Why would you build kind of like a prototype? And I can find just three reasons, right? The first is like, one, you want to kind of like explore and understand, right? So the moment that you start putting stuff there, that's the moment that you really are able to, okay, that's how it works. That's how it works, because you're not if you don't build some sort of prototype of what you have in your head, that's not going to
Mhm.
work. The second one, and this is something that I'm curious about this, I'm going to ask you is, I want to show it to someone and I want to get feedback. right? This is the other thing, because then you want, okay, now I have it. Do you like it, right? That's the reason why you create sample. The last one, and is to test it. So you create something simple to test it and improve it. And I think in order to go through to this very very rapidly and improve and learn and share, get feedback and test, you need to have something that is extremely fast. So one question is like, how do you actually within your team, right, work together on this, right? Because I mean, someone is on Unity, as you said, Victor is on 3ds Max. Someone has his own creative ideas, and maybe it doesn't know any of those tools, right? I mean, could be. So how does that work in your team?
Yeah, I mean, when we started trying Suvari to design for virtual reality, we didn't have that focus on having to, positioning ourselves as a tool that helps to design and test ideas in virtual reality. We were mostly focusing on animation and storytelling. But yeah, when we started doing that, like we had sessions where we would sit together in one room, and one person will be in virtual reality just sketching. Then we would take turns, or we would share different pictures or videos from those sessions. Of like either a person will be like doing that individually and then sending that picture to other people, which works. But the most powerful thing is to observe that idea in virtual reality. So we have projects, and we share those projects, within our company, with different sketches, and anyone can, go into that sketch and.
But wait. So okay, let me just really get this solid, right? If you share it where do you share it? Is it like a whiteboard, or is it like online? Is it digital? How does this look like really practically?
Usually it was just, we have projects in Suvari, and we would share those projects using Google Drive type of thing, and it was single user. So I mean, one people at a time can absorb those or edit those kind of scenes with sketches. But now, yeah, we've been working on some new stuff, and recently we started doing. So we call it viewer. So it's possible to share, those sketches, those design ideas with other people, and other people can join and go in virtual reality, or it's possible to join via just to this just from the desktop without virtual reality. And yeah, it's possible to get together and discuss those design ideas and different spaces that were made in Suvari, and go from one scene to another, and have these sessions where we would go to, for example, even like interfaces that we're doing we are creating for that new product, we are creating in Suvari, and then we share that's in the viewer, and we go to get together in space and
Okay.
talk about. And
So basically, what's happening right now? So you're also the localized, right? So now that not everybody's can. So what happened? There's one person in Tvori, and then there are other people joining, right? This instance that is created, and this moderator or host can basically show what's the idea, show what's the UX, show what could be the UI,
yeah,
and whatever things flowing in it. Okay, so this is possible right now in Tvori.
Yep. We're still working on that thing, but yeah, we are going to release it someday. We are now testing that.
Someday.
Yeah.
It's those things are very scary, eh? That's how it works, because someday it's really like very far.
Yeah. But yeah, we're currently trying to explore, develop this product around needs of teams who develop virtual reality or augmented reality, and yeah, right now we're trying to design that. I guess we can call it a new product around those needs. So what people want to share, how they
Yeah.
shared, how they get together, and what do they need from perspective of commenting, or from the perspective of like how the host should navigate people around those spaces, how to put attention of other people who attend. It's basically like right now we have, in this conversation, with this interview, we have Zoom, we have YouTube. That is, Zoom is streaming to YouTube, and we control this experience, 100%. in terms of like I can share my screen, you can share your screen, and we do similar thing for virtual
Dima,
reality.
I'm sorry. I really found a very interesting question from when. She says, "What's the ideal workflow that you foresee?" It's interesting, right? So because right now, of course, we have limitation, right? But let's imagine that you have done it, right? You have developed some of these together with the team, of course, these 3D interfaces. But what is exactly the question? What's the ideal workflow that you foresee?
Like in terms of like coming up with an idea, like sketching it in virtual reality, sharing it, and then you turning that idea into the final project, right?
Yeah, this is also another important thing, right? Because I don't want to only stick with this early concept. That early concept at some point has to move, right? Because we cannot expect some. There was also another question: can you design full? Can you design a full experience in 4D? The answer is no, right? You cannot and you shouldn't, because you need some sort of tools for in Unity that you don't have. And I think mixing the two things is different. Would you design a website in Figma? No, you can't, and you shouldn't, but because they're two different things, right? So if I go back to that question, it's like, what would be this ideal workflow that you foresee in the future?
I can show you the current workflow, and then talk about what can be like improved or how we can move forward. And we'll share my screen again. And so we have a timeline in Suvari, and actually, I have a video that explains, shows evolution of timeline, but I can show that later maybe. But so here is the process of actually designing the timeline within Suvari and then turning that timeline into the actual tool that we have. So here is the real timeline, and here is the design that was made fully in Suvari, using all of the primitives that we have. And so you basically use it similar to how you use Figma, but in three dimensions. And so every piece of that timeline is an individual object.
Yeah.
And then after you're done with it, you can play with colors and just try to imagine that it is a real tool, and maybe animate it a little bit to kind of show what is. Yeah. So first we done that in Suvari, then we can export that as a 3D format, put it into Unity, and then either program over those elements and turn them interactive, or use or kind of make final visuals in other editors, but using those as a reference, those that were exported from Suvari.
Yeah.
So with timeline, we actually just took so majority of elements were models that we have in the final timeline that is being used in Suvari. It came from the design, the
prototypes. Yeah. And one thing is also that
when you design a website or an app in Figma, you would export it, and if you have like unique buttons, then you would slice those images of buttons into different pictures and kind of assign them to special containers that would stretch. And so you can do that with virtual reality as well.
So then in this case, one thing though is that there's also a big difference is that you don't just get the 3D model in this case, right? So if, for example, you're simulating something else, you will get, I believe, also the animation, right? If I understood correctly.
Yeah, you can animate an element and then export it and either use it as a reference for developers, or even maybe you can use it as the final animation and play that animation on some trigger when person interacts with the user interface.
Yeah. So let's then kind of like if you would give an advice to someone that right now, okay, I am tomorrow, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna work on a side project, I'm gonna work for my company, and we are now designing a new experience, right? With the current tool that they have, right? Because let's say that they can, of course, go to a website, try out Suvari, and have fun. But let's say with the current tools that they have, what kind of advice would you give them to improve their design, to improve their experience?
Yeah, yeah. Iterate as much as possible, going into virtual reality, and it applies to augmented reality as well.
I don't hear.
Test
Okay,
as
you
much as
dropped for a
possible
second.
for
You dropped for a
discussion.
second. Can you talk the last 5 seconds, because I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Test as much as possible and iterate quickly with virtual reality. Just put it as quickly as possible. If you probably you're using Unity or Unreal Engine or maybe Godot, maybe you have your own engine. But in any case, uh, test it as much as possible in virtual reality and design from from ideas from thoughts that you had while while you were interacting with your your interface or idea. But yeah, I would recommend to download any app that allows you to sketch in virtual reality or create things and sketch your ideas there.
Okay.
You can program your if you have ideas for interactions on kind of timing of things, you can program that if you can, if you can program. But if you can't, then you can also you can use Suvari to assemble your UIs and then animate them and just make them appear as if they are interactive. You can do that in Quill as well, but it's harder. Yeah, we currently we are trying to do create the most useful, I guess, and the most friendly
Yeah.
tool for designing.
I've seen someone mention it. I would argue that prototyping an AR experience in VR, actually Sebastian, sorry Sebastian, I would argue prototyping an AR experience in VR has a heavy drawback, as you are missing real world interaction, talking about people and objects. That's interesting, because how do you approach then a prototyping an AR experience then?
Ah, like if you are creating an AR experience in virtual reality
No, that's, I mean, imagine, right? I'm developing a VR experience. I have my phone, right? And that's, I have Torch AR, maybe. There's some things that people use, I heard, right? But then what's like, how am I gonna make this prototype? Because honestly, when it's about AR, I've seen the craziest prototype ever. I mean, there are these crazy paper prototype, and I think they give a good physical impression. But so my question is you, because now we are talking about also immersive experiences, right? So how
Mhm.
would you approach instead AR prototyping?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We started doing that for one company that for people who use Tivori at one company, and they actually approached us and said that we are working on augmented reality stuff. We have Magic Leap, we have HoloLens. How do we design our stuff in Tivori, but with kind of understanding of limitations of field of view
So this
and
case, this headset-based AR, you're talking about HoloLens or something like that.
yes, like HoloLens, and HoloLens has like narrow field of view, so it's just like 60-degree or less. I mean, the second one, so it's like if you take a credit card or another rectangular object and put it like in front of you, it will be roughly the FOV. So how do you design for that in Tivori? And yeah, we started like we first did the first prototype, which is basically we took basic shapes in Tivori and created kind of a limited, like a rectangular
Ah, okay.
a portal, and we attached that portal to a viewpoint. And so when you press play, you appear at that exact viewpoint with a thing attached to your head. And so that was our first approach to making kind of
So you get kind
simulate.
of like a window that is stick to your head, and
Yeah,
everything around is closed except
exactly.
that kind of. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
Like later we created a spatial kind of shader and tool sets that allow you to paint objects in space that you consider to be virtual
Yeah.
or augmented, and then you press play, and those objects will be like they will have that kind of transparency
Mm-hmm.
that augmented reality objects have when they appear in your real world. So they're semi-transparent and kind of bluish, and we have that, and we also cut them so they're drawn only in that limited field of view. And you can switch between HoloLens, you can switch between Magic Leap, and you can we have these kind of puppets that humanoid figures. You can position those in your scene and imagine that those are real people. You can have your environment that you think that represent your room, and you can paint those in a certain color, and then start making interfaces for augmented reality, and look from human scale how it looks, how it behaves, turning on that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
FOV.
That window. In that case, there
Yeah,
is no. It's like it really simulates what's the FOV reduction
yes, yeah,
with the thing.
yeah, basically
One question. There
simulation
is
of.
Fabio that asks: is it possible to export my prototype for Unity? Ciao,
Yeah, yeah,
Fabio.
yeah. We have. You can export it in like FBX format or OBJ. So there are a couple of formats, and then use it as reference. Program that model, add scripts to it. Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, okay. And there was also someone that asked: can I share my prototype?
All right.
Like, can
It's
you share
either
this?
my internet dropped or
Yeah. Now I'm back.
hi.
Okay, we are back. Let's see for how long. Let's keep this alive. Don't drop, please. So no, my question was like, and what about? I had a question about. So someone also asked, so how can I share this stuff with my clients? So if I'm working on something, what would be the best way to share that with someone?
Yeah, right now with the current version, what you can do is you can take pictures or like photos of stuff that you created. You can make videos and show those to your clients and say, okay, those are prototypes, just ideas that we had. And then you can convince them to put on the headset while Suvari is running if they are present with you. And but yeah, the presence is required with the current version. That's why we are working on this new stuff that allows you to share scenes with other people, and then you would just send them a link, and people will, open that link, download our special viewer thing, like a special app that plays Suvari scenes, and they could run that on PC or Oculus
Okay.
Quest, and you can be present with those clients actually if you are at the same time in the same room, and you can talk about stuff related to that design idea. You can switch between. So it's basically like having PowerPoint, but in virtual reality, where the PowerPoint is multi-user. So you are
Yeah.
present with other
And
people.
animated in that case.
Yes, animated. Yeah, animated also virtual reality.
Yeah, yeah.
That might be our one-liner for.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think someone mentioned it. I'm not sure if to be proud of it or not. Because I have a sort of a hater and a lover relationship with PowerPoint.
Yeah, I
One
mean,
question.
yeah, people kind of it supports like yeah, PowerPoint is maybe not the best example because it's being used in corporate world, and it's often like big, and I mean people would better explain that with with their words or written article than with just short PowerPoint slides that might be not as. But yeah, I mean people overdo PowerPoint, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. One question. So now, can you show us maybe some of the example that you are proud of? Right. So like, so this is some of. I don't know if maybe you can directly hop in for it, but not really to show more in this case, but really to show like how maybe you end up to this example. How did you come up with that? I don't know. Can you do that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have my headset here, so let me see whether it's connected well. So it's an Oculus Quest, which is a mobile headset, but it's connected to my PC, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can share my screen, I can work on Suvari. Yes, and I'm going to share my screen. Oh, actually, let me first launch Suvari.
So guys, if it doesn't drop and we don't lose connection now, it's never gonna happen. So it's now or never. Let's see. I think Dima got stuck for a sec. I'm back. Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
So meanwhile, guys, if you have any question, is there something that you would like to ask? Anything regarding their own design, and it could be anything about Suvari, it could be anything about team collaboration, about how you prototype, if you want to share. So please, everybody in the chat, I'm here. If I don't answer everybody, it's because, you know, I've just two eyes. But please, so if you have any other question, just pop in. So we have Dima that setting it up, sharing his screen, and now we are in. Yeah.
So here I opened one of the scenes with one of the versions. It's actually the latest version of the timeline, and it's running in Suvari. And this is the prototype, or actually the actual design. And so it basically consisted. So it basically was built with shapes that we have in Suvari. You don't have to use shapes. You can use any kind of model that you have at hand. And here is the final design, which has a little bit different colors, but generally it is the same.
Yeah.
So, and what I'm proud of is that it's still, there are like things to explore in that direction, but so our tools are spatial. So you can, for example, take a shelf, the shelf. We have only one shelf, and it contains different, say we have tools, we have a camera, we can throw it away, and it will delete itself. We can select objects.
Oh yeah, this is the multi-select I was seeing there before, yeah.
Yes. We can take objects from that shelf. We can actually, scale objects. We can use both hands. I can use my left hand. I can use my right hand. And I'm a left-handed person, and I hate to go to an app that is primarily right-handed, and it's a pain to find even sometimes settings for left-handed people. But it's kind of it makes sense in two-brush, because usually painters they paint with their dominant hand and they use their non-dominant hand for like minor support and to hold the palette. But in case when you are creating, when you are moving 3D objects, it's very natural to grab those objects with both hands.
Yeah, because for example, what is happening with the trigger? Because I see that there is a trigger that changed, the UI on the trigger changed whenever you do stuff, right? Because I see that, for example, now there is a play button, and then when you grab, there is some sort of slider, right?
Oh yeah. You can, yeah. We switch. We have some contextual buttons, so you can kind of make things bigger, smaller, and we have. So here, I don't think we have animation here, but basically, so when you have animation, or when you have say in that case, I will put a special kind of person.
Yeah.
That we call viewpoint, and if I press play, in that case, so here I am. Oh no. So I kind of get immersed into that position, and from that scale I can observe things. And yeah, it's useful when you want to have a point of human scale that you want to go, to understand how your final thing that you're creating is going to look like in your human scale. So we can scale ourselves anyhow, like we can rotate ourselves. But
There
then
is a
you can quickly,
question. There is a question from Charen. He says, "What is the function of the blue onion visual that appears when you grab an object?"
like this, like
Yeah,
the highlight.
yeah. I think
Or
that's what he is referring. Yeah, kind of like
yeah,
the
I mean,
onion. Yeah.
yeah, it's just to show that an object is which object is going to be selected. So if I have multiple objects, it's clear for me that now I'm going to select this one
Oh yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
this
yeah.
one. Yeah, you can, let's say we have many objects,
Yeah.
and I can just quickly understand which one is going to be selected and moved. Yeah.
Okay, so and was there any other interface that, for example, took particularly long to develop? I don't know if there are. You show this. You show the the
Like
the
shelf.
palette, right? But there was are there other that took or were
Yeah, actually,
particularly difficult?
I prepared some videos as well for to show evolution of
Hmm.
how we developed. I have two examples, which is object shelf and a and timeline. So let me show. Yeah, I will show the shelf first. So let me know if the video is smooth enough and you can see stuff. If not, then I will pause and just show
Hmm.
what it has.
It's
So
good to
okay,
me.
object shelf.
Yeah,
That's basically a library of objects. And
yeah.
so the first version was a kind of tray with things on top, and we just played with that idea that objects that we are going to use, they are presented on the surface, and they are 3D. It's not just an avatar, an icon. You can judge by the way how it looks on the shelf, whether it's suitable for you to have it on the scene. And so the kind of the whole action of taking objects from when they're floating somewhere near, like somewhere, or standing on some surfaces, felt satisfying. So it's satisfying to grab objects from the shelf and place them on scene. It's almost like playing with toys, and it's also useful to have objects as actual objects on the shelf instead of just icons placed on a grid. And then we played further. So in this particular example, we have it's like second iteration of object shelf. Um, we had drawers, where each drawer is a category, and so you would grab from that. You would extend the drawer from under the table, and it was possible to teleport on the surface in human scale. Then we compacted that into a special tray that we call shelf now.
Yes. Yeah.
And each button contains a packet. So you press on a button, and a packet of objects appear. And objects are not standing on grid; they are placed kind of playfully and in an interesting way. And then we put the shelf in our workspace menu, and so now you can have the shelf anywhere with you. So when you're moving on the scene as an editor, it stays with you. And if you are not using the shelf, you can just close it, or you can go from one pack to another quickly by just pressing those buttons. And it, aside from objects, it contains tools such as cameras, lights, and another thing that I can show is evolution of timeline. So at first, the timeline was just a player. Oh, by the way, in Suvari, it's possible to animate stuff.
Yeah.
It's possible to animate in real time. So when you grab an object with your hand and move around, the motion will be recorded. Another way would be more traditional, is to have keyframes where you set individual keyframes by hand at certain time. And so initially, yeah, it was super simple. Just play button, stop button, record button, and it was possible to scrap it and animate objects playfully. And this is like the very first, well, maybe not the very first, but one of the first prototypes that we had. And then we played more with the idea of having tools in space, like you have a table and you have tools around. and it's very satisfying to reach those or place them in a position that suits you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's sometimes maybe less convenient. It's maybe more convenient to have it's kind of quicker to access to some laser pointer. But yeah, we're still having those as you have to reach for a slider or for a play or stop button. But you can also have we have hotkeys, so you don't have to always reach. You can scrub things with your controller. But then we evolved that further, and we now have curves in space, which is also, it's kind of evolution of what modern software does with, animation curves. We put that curve, the single curve for an object, for an animated object, and it's in space, and you can edit it with your hands. And so the newest version of the timeline, and it's probably not the last one. So we have lots of ideas for the timeline. How can we make it simpler? How can we improve it? How can we make more powerful yet simpler for newcomers? And it was fully designed in Suvari.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, we will continue doing practicing.
Yeah, and ever improving, right? I think that now the moment that the more people start using it, it's always like it's a never-ending process, and that's a good thing, right? So I think we are basically like wrapping up. I think we are at the end of the hour. So if there are a few things that I actually grabbed that I think were particularly interesting and relevant, one was, for example, about try to take inspiration for how actually people move in space, right? People that used to, depending on how they interact with object and they move, that is something that has to be translated directly into the UI UX. Another one is that basically a good UI UX is when you grab something and you know what to do with it, right? There's a cap, similar, and you drink. So in this case, emulate objects that have a real life function and use it.
And I guess we can take inspiration from physical objects that you just showed. So what modern product designer is doing when he or she is designing a certain physical object, what they think about how it's going to be used, how it's going to look in space. And I think, yeah, we can draw a lot of stuff from industrial design and transfer that into virtual reality.
Yeah. And the last one that I heard was about to start designing basically in 3D as soon as possible. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do about it, right? But the sooner you start creating in 3D, the faster you can understand and share those ideas, get feedbacks, and improve. Right, so those are some of my personal takeaway.
Yeah.
Dima, I really want to thank you for knowing more about it, and we hope really that you guys got something out of it, maybe got inspired, and to go out and create, to iterate faster, fail faster, and then. I'm gonna send also like a quick form to hear you guys if you like what you heard. We are gonna also send the video with the recording so that you can watch it later if you're interested. If you have any other question, just please get in touch with the team, and it will be a pleasure, guys, to hear your feedbacks. So I wish Dima.
Thank you a lot, so everyone who attended and asked questions. Gabriel summed up the idea pretty neatly. So design virtual reality and augmented reality in virtual reality because it's powerful and can lead you to new ideas and allow you to find the best ideas, the most convenient and interesting ideas for that new medium. And we can explore that together because we uncovered just a tiny bit of things that we have in front of us.
Yeah, I think it's about the future, right? We are here exploring. Everybody, many of the people that are joining here are really here curious. They want to understand, and I think we can only do it with each other. So also, if you have design, if you have stuff, please get in touch. We would love to see and maybe have a chat in it. Maybe we could meet up in Suvari, right? And review them, right? And exchange feedback with each other. That would be awesome. Would really be a pleasure to do that. So guys, thank you very much, Dima. Thank you again for being here, and I wish you everybody guys a good evening or a good rest of the day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.